Welcome to
our channel.
Have you ever stopped and thought about how different our daily lives are compared with just a few decades ago?
Yeah, sometimes I think about it. A lot of things that feel normal today would have seemed impossible in the past.
That's true.
For example, if you want to eat something, you don't necessarily need to cook.
Right.
You can just open an app, choose a restaurant, and have food delivered to your door.
And sometimes the food arrives faster than we expected.
Exactly.
If you want to buy something, you don't need to go to a store anymore.
You can order almost anything online,
Clothes, electronics, books, even groceries.
and they can arrive the next day, sometimes even on the same day.
It's amazing when you really think about it.
Yeah,
Technology has removed so many small difficulties from our lives.
that's probably one of the biggest changes of the modern world.
We live in a time when convenience is everywhere.
Yeah,
Everything seems designed to save time and reduce effort.
and honestly, there are many benefits.
Definitely.
Convenience can make life easier, especially for people who are busy.
For example, someone who works long hours might not have enough time to cook every night.
So food delivery can be really helpful.
Someone who lives far away from a store can buy things online.
Someone who has difficulty traveling can use technology to access services.
So convenience itself is not a bad thing.
No, not at all.
Actually, many inventions were created because people wanted to make life better.
Right.
The washing machine saved people hours of physical work.
The internet made information available to almost everyone.
Smartphones made communication much easier.
Technology has solved many problems.
But I think there's an interesting question.
What's that?
When does convenience become too much?
That's a good question.
Because sometimes, I wonder if we have become so used to convenience that we don't even notice it anymore.
I think that's true.
We expect everything to happen quickly.
Yeah.
We expect websites to load immediately.
We expect messages to receive quick replies.
We expect deliveries to arrive as soon as possible,
And when something takes longer, we get frustrated.
even if the waiting time is actually reasonable.
That's an interesting change in human behavior.
Do you think technology has changed our expectations?
Definitely.
How?
I think technology doesn't just change what we can do. It changes what we think we should be able to do.
That's a really interesting point.
For example, years ago, waiting a few days for a package was normal.
Right.
People planned ahead.
But now, many people expect fast delivery.
Because we know it's possible.
So the possibility becomes an expectation.
Exactly.
That happens in many areas of life.
Yeah,
Communication is a good example.
definitely.
Before smartphones, if someone didn't answer your call, you just waited.
You didn't assume anything was wrong.
But now, if someone sees your message and doesn't reply for hours, people sometimes start wondering,
Did I say something wrong?
are they ignoring me?
Why haven't they answered?
It's interesting because technology gave us faster communication.
But it also created new expectations.
Exactly.
We became used to instant responses.
I think that's one of the hidden effects of convenience.
What do you mean?
Convenience saves us time, but it can also change our relationship with time.
That's a good way to describe it.
We used to understand that some things require patience,
Like waiting for a letter,
waiting for information,
waiting for results.
waiting for people.
But now, waiting feels more uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Because we know there might be a faster option.
that reminds me of something.
What?
Sometimes I wonder if we have become less comfortable with simple moments.
Simple moments.
Yeah,
Like what?
standing in line without checking your phone,
That's a good example.
sitting quietly without entertainment,
Walking somewhere without listening to something.
waiting for a friend without constantly checking messages.
That's true.
In the past, those moments were normal.
People had more empty space in their day.
But now we often try to fill every empty moment.
With information,
Videos,
messages,
news,
social media.
and maybe that's because we are not used to being bored anymore.
That's an interesting idea.
Do you think boredom is actually useful?
I think it can be.
Really?
Yeah, when people have nothing to do, their minds sometimes become more creative.
Because they have space to think.
Exactly.
But if every empty moment is filled, maybe we lose those opportunities.
That's possible.
So maybe convenience doesn't only remove difficulties.
Maybe it also removes certain experiences.
That's a deep point.
Yeah,
For example, GPS is incredibly useful.
of course.
It helps us find places easily.
It saves time.
But some people say they no longer remember how to navigate without it
That's true.
because they don't practice that skill anymore.
Right.
So technology can make us more efficient.
But sometimes we give up certain abilities.
The question becomes, what should we keep practicing ourselves?
That's probably the important question.
Because using tools is not the problem.
The problem is depending on tools for everything.
Exactly.
A calculator is useful.
But understanding basic math is still important.
A translation app is useful.
But learning another language still has value.
AI can help us think.
But we still need our own judgment.
Right.
Maybe the goal is not to reject convenience.
It's to use convenience wisely.
I like that.
Because technology itself is not good or bad.
It depends on how we use it.
Exactly.
You know, I think the biggest change is not the technology around us.
What is it?
It's the way technology has changed our habits.
I agree.
The things we expect.
The way we spend time.
The way we solve problems.
The way we interact with the world.
And maybe that's something worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Because a more convenient life is not automatically a better life.
Sometimes making life easier also means we need to think more carefully about what we might lose.
You know, after talking about convenience, I think there's another interesting question.
What's that?
Are we becoming less patient because everything around us is becoming faster?
I think that's a really interesting question.
Because patience used to be a much bigger part of everyday life.
Yeah.
People waited for letters.
They waited for phone calls.
They waited for photos to be developed.
They waited for information.
They waited for things that couldn't happen instantly.
Right.
But now, so many things happen immediately.
Yeah.
If we want information, we search online.
If we want entertainment, we open an app.
If we want food, we order it.
If we want to talk to someone, we send a message.
Everything is available within seconds.
And because we experience that every day, we start expecting the same speed everywhere.
That's probably true.
The interesting thing is that our brains adapt to what we repeatedly experience.
So if we constantly get instant results, we become used to instant results.
Exactly.
And then waiting starts to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Even small delays can annoy people.
Like waiting a few seconds for a web page to load.
Or waiting in a line.
Or waiting for someone to reply.
It's interesting because the actual waiting time might be very short.
But emotionally, it feels much longer.
Why do you think that happens?
Maybe because we are not only waiting for something. We are also dealing with the feeling of not having control.
That's a good point.
When something happens instantly, we feel in control.
We choose something, and we get the result.
Right.
But waiting means we have to accept that something is outside our control.
And that can be difficult.
That's actually a deeper issue than just patience.
Yeah.
It's about our relationship with uncertainty.
Exactly.
I think many people today struggle with uncertainty because technology has reduced so many unknowns.
How?
For example, if you travel somewhere new, you don't need to worry too much about getting lost.
Because your phone can guide you.
If you have a question, you don't need to wonder for days.
You can search for the answer immediately.
If you want to buy something, you can compare prices instantly.
Everything is designed to reduce uncertainty.
But life itself still has uncertainty.
That's the important part.
We can make many things faster.
But we can't speed up everything.
You can't rush learning.
You can't rush building trust.
You can't rush relationships.
You can't rush personal growth.
Those things still require time.
Yeah.
And maybe that creates a conflict.
Between the speed of technology and the speed of human life.
Exactly.
That's a really interesting way to see it.
Technology moves extremely fast.
But humans still need time to develop.
A person cannot become fluent in a language overnight.
A person cannot build a strong friendship in one day.
A person cannot understand themselves completely in a week.
Right.
But sometimes we expect ourselves to improve immediately.
That's true.
People want quick success,
Quick results.
quick solutions.
And when they don't get them, they feel frustrated.
I think social media has also influenced this.
Definitely.
Because we constantly see other people's results.
Yeah.
Someone gets a new job.
Someone starts a successful business.
Someone learns a new skill.
Someone reaches a big goal.
But we usually don't see the years of effort behind those moments.
Exactly.
We see the final picture.
Not the process.
And that can create unrealistic expectations.
Right.
People think, why am I not successful yet?
Because they compare their beginning with someone else's finished product.
That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
I think patience is difficult because modern culture often celebrates speed.
What do you mean?
We admire people who achieve things quickly,
Like becoming successful at a young age.
building something overnight.
Getting fast results.
But we don't talk as much about slow progress.
Even though slow progress is usually more realistic.
Exactly.
Many valuable things take years.
A career,
A relationship.
a skill,
A reputation.
a strong character.
Those things cannot be downloaded.
That's a good line.
Thanks.
I think another reason patience is becoming harder is because we have so many choices.
Interesting.
How does choice affect patience?
I think when there are too many options, people become less willing to wait.
Why?
Because they know there is always another option available.
Can you give an example?
Sure, imagine watching a movie 20 years ago.
Okay.
You might choose from a few channels.
Right.
If nothing interesting was playing, you might just watch something else or wait.
But now,
Now there are thousands of choices.
streaming platforms, videos, and websites.
Exactly.
So if something doesn't immediately interest us, we leave.
Right.
We have become very good at avoiding boredom.
Yeah,
But maybe boredom is not always the enemy.
I agree.
Sometimes patience is built through moments when nothing exciting is happening.
That's true.
Waiting teaches us how to handle discomfort,
And that's a useful skill.
because life will always include waiting.
Definitely.
Waiting for opportunities,
Waiting for change.
waiting for answers.
Waiting for other people.
We cannot remove all waiting from life.
So maybe we need to become better at waiting.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah,
But how can someone become more patient?
I think one way is practicing small moments of discomfort.
Such as,
Maybe not checking your phone every time you have a free moment.
that's difficult for many people.
I know.
Or waiting a little longer before buying something.
Thinking about whether you really need it.
Or allowing yourself to be bored sometimes.
Exactly.
Those sound like small things.
They are.
But small habits can change how we respond to the world.
I think so.
Maybe patience is like a muscle.
That's a good comparison.
The more we practice it, the stronger it becomes.
Yeah.
And the opposite is also true.
If we always choose the fastest option, waiting becomes harder.
Right.
It's not about rejecting technology.
It's about remembering that not everything should happen instantly.
Exactly.
Some things are valuable because they take time.
Like growing,
Learning,
creating,
connecting with people,
building a meaningful life.
those things cannot be rushed.
I think that's something modern people need to remember.
Yeah,
Convenience can save time.
but patience helps us use time better.
That's a really important difference.
Maybe the question isn't, how can we make everything faster?
Maybe sometimes we should ask, is this something that needs to be faster?
I like that.
Because speed is not always the same as progress.
And convenience is not always the same as improvement.
Exactly.
Sometimes slowing down is actually the better choice. You know, after talking about patience, I think there's another question that is worth discussing.
What's that?
Does convenience make us less independent?
That's a really interesting question.
Because technology has helped us solve so many problems.
Yeah,
But sometimes, I wonder if we have started depending on technology too much.
I think many people have that concern.
For example, think about navigation.
GPS,
Exactly.
that's probably one of the easiest examples.
Today, most people use their phones to find places.
And honestly, it's incredibly useful.
Of course,
You can travel to a new city and find your way without knowing the area.
you can avoid traffic.
You can find restaurants, hotels, and important places.
It makes traveling much easier.
But there is another side.
What do you mean?
Some people feel uncomfortable when they have to find their way without technology.
That's true.
They don't remember directions.
They don't pay attention to their surroundings.
They simply follow the voice on the screen.
That's interesting.
Because the tool is solving the problem, but we are not always developing the skill ourselves.
So the question is not whether the tool is useful.
Right.
The question is whether we still know how to do things without it.
Exactly.
I think this happens with many technologies.
Yeah,
Calculators are a good example.
definitely.
Calculators are extremely helpful.
They save time and reduce mistakes.
But if someone uses a calculator for every simple calculation, they may stop practicing basic math skills.
Right.
The tool helps, but too much dependence can become a problem.
That's the balance.
I think AI is another example.
Definitely.
AI can help people write, research, organize information, and solve problems.
It's a powerful tool.
But do you think people might become too dependent on it?
I think that's possible.
Why?
Because sometimes the easiest answer is not always the most valuable answer.
What do you mean?
For example, if someone asks AI to write everything for them, they might finish tasks faster.
But they might lose the chance to develop their own ideas.
Exactly.
The process of thinking is important.
Yeah,
Sometimes struggling with a problem teaches us more than immediately getting the answer.
that's true.
Because when we struggle, we learn how to analyze,
How to make decisions.
how to solve problems.
Those are human skills.
So maybe technology should support thinking, not replace thinking.
I think that's the key.
That's a very important idea.
Yeah,
I remember when people first started using smartphones, many people worried about becoming too dependent on them.
and now smartphones are almost impossible to live without.
That's true.
Think about how many things are inside one small device.
A phone,
A camera,
a map,
a calendar,
a bank,
a communication tool,
an entertainment system.
a library.
It's amazing.
But it also means we carry a lot of responsibility in one device.
What kind of responsibility?
Managing how we use it.
That's a good point.
Because a smartphone can be useful or distracting, depending on how we use it.
Right.
The same device can help someone learn a new language.
Or it can waste hours of their time.
Exactly.
The technology itself is not the problem.
The relationship we have with the technology matters more.
I like that idea.
Yeah,
Maybe independence today doesn't mean doing everything without technology.
that's a good distinction.
Because avoiding technology completely is unrealistic.
Right.
Modern life depends on technology.
The question is whether we control the tools or the tools control us.
That's probably the biggest question.
Yeah.
I think there is also a difference between convenience and ability.
What do you mean?
A convenient tool can make something easier.
But ability is what allows us to handle situations when things don't go as planned.
Can you give an example?
Sure.
Okay,
Imagine someone always uses online banking.
that's normal today.
But if there is a technical problem, they may suddenly feel helpless if they don't understand basic financial information.
That makes sense.
The tool is useful, but understanding the system behind the tool is still important.
That's a great example.
Another example is communication.
Using messaging apps makes communication easier.
But knowing how to have a difficult conversation face-to-face is still important.
Because technology cannot replace emotional skills.
Exactly.
I think that's something people sometimes forget.
Yeah,
We often focus on what technology can do.
but we don't always think about what humans need to continue doing.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Technology can calculate.
But humans need judgment.
Technology can provide information.
But humans need wisdom.
Technology can connect people.
But humans need to build relationships.
Exactly.
So maybe the future is not about choosing between humans and technology.
Maybe it's about learning how to work together.
I agree.
Because the best results usually happen when human abilities and technology support each other.
That's true.
A doctor can use advanced technology to diagnose diseases.
But human understanding and communication are still necessary.
A teacher can use digital tools.
But inspiration and encouragement still come from people.
A designer can use AI tools.
But creativity and vision still matter.
Exactly.
You know, I think there is another interesting effect of convenience.
What's that?
Sometimes when everything becomes easier, we forget that effort has value.
That's a good point.
For example, people often feel proud when they learn something difficult.
Because they know they worked for it.
Right.
If everything is done instantly, we might lose some of that feeling.
The feeling of growth.
The satisfaction of improving.
The confidence that comes from overcoming challenges.
Exactly.
Maybe difficulty is not always something we should remove.
That's an interesting idea.
Some challenges help us become stronger.
Yeah,
The goal shouldn't be to create a life with zero difficulty.
because that might not actually be healthy.
Maybe the goal is to remove unnecessary difficulty while keeping meaningful challenges.
I think that's a very balanced way to look at it.
For example, using a washing machine saves time and energy.
That's a good kind of convenience.
But avoiding all physical activity because everything is automated might not be good.
Right,
Using AI to organize ideas can be helpful.
but letting AI do all your thinking may not help you grow.
Using GPS when you're in an unfamiliar place is smart.
But occasionally learning your surroundings yourself is also valuable.
So maybe independence today is not about rejecting help.
It's about knowing when to use help and when to rely on yourself.
I think that's a very important skill for the future.
Definitely.
Because technology will probably become even more powerful.
And our ability to use it wisely will become even more important.
The future may not belong to people who avoid technology.
It may belong to people who understand how to use it without losing themselves.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
Convenience can give us more freedom.
but only if we remain in control.
Otherwise, the things designed to make life easier might slowly make us less capable.
And finding that balance is probably one of the biggest challenges of modern life.
You know, after talking about how convenience affects our abilities, I think there's another side we should discuss.
What's that?
The hidden cost of convenience.
That's an interesting topic.
Because when we talk about convenience, we usually focus on the benefits.
Right.
We talk about saving time,
Making life easier.
reducing stress,
Improving efficiency.
and those things are all true.
Yeah,
But sometimes, every advantage comes with a trade-off.
that's a good way to put it.
Something becomes easier, but maybe something else changes.
Exactly.
One example is shopping.
Online shopping.
Yes,
That has completely changed the way people buy things.
definitely.
Before, people usually went to stores when they needed something.
They had to think about what they wanted.
They compared products.
They waited until they really needed something.
But now, buying something can happen almost automatically.
Right.
You can see an advertisement, click a button, and purchase something within seconds.
And sometimes that's useful.
Of course,
If you need something important, online shopping saves time.
but the problem is that it also makes unnecessary purchases easier.
Exactly.
The distance between wanting something and buying something has become very small.
That's a good observation.
In the past, you might think, do I really need this?
Because you had to go to the store.
Right.
There was time to reconsider.
But now, the decision can happen instantly.
And sometimes, we buy things not because we need them, but because buying gives us a temporary feeling of happiness.
That's true.
A new product arrives,
We feel excited,
but that excitement often disappears quickly.
and then we look for the next thing.
It can become a cycle.
Yeah.
I think this connects to a bigger question.
What question?
Are we becoming better at consuming, but worse at appreciating?
That's a deep question.
What do you think?
I think sometimes we confuse having more with living better.
Explain that.
People often believe that more choices, more products, and more experiences will automatically create a better life.
But that's not always true.
Right.
Because after a certain point, more things can create more problems.
Like what?
More things to organize.
More things to maintain.
More decisions to make.
More distractions.
Exactly.
Sometimes having too many choices can actually make people feel overwhelmed.
That's interesting.
Think about choosing a movie.
Okay.
If you only have a few options, making a decision is easy.
But if you have thousands of choices,
You might spend more time choosing than actually watching.
that happens a lot.
Yeah,
So convenience creates more options, but more options don't always create more happiness.
exactly.
Another hidden cost is the effect on our attention.
Definitely.
Modern life is full of things competing for our attention.
Messages,
notifications,
advertisements,
videos.
news updates.
There is always something trying to get us to look.
Right.
And because information is so easy to access, we are constantly switching between different things.
Yeah.
We check our phones while waiting.
We check messages while watching something.
We search for information while doing another task.
Multitasking has become normal.
But is multitasking actually good?
That's a complicated question,
Why?
because many people think they are doing more, but they may actually be focusing less.
That makes sense.
When we constantly switch attention, our brain has to keep adjusting.
So even though we feel busy, we may not be deeply focused.
Exactly.
And deep focus is important for many things.
Learning,
Creating,
solving problems.
having meaningful conversations.
Right.
So maybe convenience has made information easier to access, but attention harder to protect.
I think that's true.
That's a very modern problem.
Yeah.
People in the past worried about not having enough information.
But today, many people struggle with having too much information.
That's a huge change.
It is.
Another thing we should talk about is the environmental cost of convenience.
Definitely.
Because many convenient services depend on systems that require a lot of resources.
Right.
Fast delivery means more transportation,
More packaging.
more energy use.
Exactly.
Single-use products are another example.
Yeah.
They are convenient because we don't need to clean or reuse them.
But they create more waste.
So a choice that feels easy for one person can create a bigger impact on the environment.
That's something people are becoming more aware of.
I think this creates an interesting conflict.
What kind?
People want convenience, but they also want a sustainable future.
Right.
And sometimes those goals can conflict.
Yeah.
For example, getting everything delivered immediately is convenient.
But maybe slower, more thoughtful consumption would be better for the environment.
Exactly.
The challenge is finding balance.
I think balance is probably the main idea of this whole conversation.
I agree.
Because the problem is not convenience itself.
Right.
The problem is when convenience becomes the only thing we value.
That's an important difference.
A comfortable life is good.
But a meaningful life requires more than comfort.
What do you mean?
Some of the most valuable experiences in life require effort.
Like learning a skill,
Building relationships,
creating something,
taking care of your health.
helping others,
Those things are not always convenient.
but they are meaningful.
Exactly.
Sometimes the difficult path is valuable because it changes us.
Yeah.
If everything becomes effortless, maybe we lose opportunities to develop.
That's true.
Think about exercise.
Okay.
If there were a machine that could make you healthy without any effort, many people would choose it.
Probably.
But exercise is not only about the result.
It's also about discipline,
Building confidence,
learning consistency.
feeling proud of yourself.
Exactly.
The process matters.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something we forget in a world focused on efficiency.
We often ask, how can we do this faster?
But maybe sometimes we should ask, is the process itself valuable?
That's a really good question.
Because not everything that saves time improves life.
Exactly.
Sometimes spending time on something is what makes it meaningful.
I agree.
A handwritten letter takes longer than a message.
But it may feel more personal.
Cooking takes longer than ordering food.
But it can become a meaningful experience.
Walking somewhere takes longer than driving.
But you might notice things you would normally miss.
So maybe the goal is not to remove all effort.
It's to choose where our effort goes.
I really like that idea.
Yeah.
Use convenience for things that don't matter.
Save energy for things that do matter.
That sounds like a healthy approach.
I think so.
Because the future will probably become even more convenient.
Definitely.
Technology will continue improving.
Life will continue becoming faster.
But humans will still need to decide what kind of life they want.
That's the important part.
Convenience can help us.
But it shouldn't define us.
Exactly. After everything we've discussed, I think the biggest question is not whether convenience is good or bad.
Yeah, because the answer is probably more complicated than that.
Right.
Convenience has improved our lives in many ways.
It saves time.
It reduces unnecessary problems.
It gives people access to things that were difficult to reach before.
And honestly, many of these changes are positive.
But the challenge is learning how to use convenience without letting it control our lives.
I think that's the key.
Because technology will probably continue becoming more convenient.
Definitely.
Things that seem impossible today may become normal in the future.
Just like many things we use today would have seemed impossible to people in the past.
So the question is not whether convenience will increase.
It probably will.
The question is how we adapt to it.
Exactly.
I think one important skill in the future will be knowing when to use technology and when not to.
That's a really important skill.
For example, if you need information quickly, using technology makes sense.
Of course.
But if you want to understand something deeply, sometimes you need to slow down.
Right.
Reading a book,
Having a conversation.
thinking about a problem,
Practicing a skill.
those things require time.
And they require attention.
I think attention might become one of the most valuable things in the future.
I agree.
Why?
Because information is becoming easier to get, but focused attention is becoming harder to maintain.
That's a very interesting point.
Anyone can access information now.
But not everyone can focus long enough to understand it.
Exactly.
So maybe the advantage in the future won't only be knowing more.
It will be knowing how to think,
How to focus,
how to make decisions,
how to understand people.
how to create.
Those are very human abilities.
Yeah,
You know, I think another important part of balance is learning to enjoy slower moments.
I agree.
Because we often think slow means inefficient.
Right.
If something takes longer, we assume it's a problem.
But sometimes slower experiences are valuable.
Can you think of an example?
Cooking.
Cooking.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Today, ordering food is extremely easy.
True.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Of course.
But cooking can be more than just preparing food.
It can be an experience.
Exactly.
You learn something.
You become creative.
You spend time with people.
You create memories.
So even though it takes more time, it gives something different.
Right.
Maybe this is true for many things.
I think so.
Walking instead of driving.
Writing instead of typing sometimes.
Talking face-to-face instead of only messaging.
Learning something slowly instead of looking for a shortcut.
The slower option is not always worse.
Sometimes it gives us something the faster option cannot.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I also think we need to redefine what a successful modern life looks like.
What do you mean?
A lot of people think success means being as efficient as possible,
Doing more things in less time.
having more achievements.
Being constantly productive.
But maybe a good life is not just about productivity.
I agree.
Maybe it's also about quality.
Quality of relationships.
Quality of experiences.
Quality of our attention.
Quality of our thoughts.
Exactly.
Because someone can be extremely productive, but still feel exhausted and disconnected.
That's true.
And someone can have a simpler life, but feel more satisfied.
Right.
So maybe the goal is not to maximize everything.
Maybe the goal is to choose what deserves our energy.
That's a very important idea.
Yeah.
Because convenience often asks, how can we make this easier?
But life also requires another question.
Which is,
Is this something worth doing?
I like that.
Because sometimes we spend time making unnecessary things easier.
That's true.
We automate something,
Then we save time.
but we use that extra time doing something that doesn't really matter.
That happens a lot.
So saving time is only useful if we use that time well.
That might be the most important lesson.
Yeah,
Convenience gives us more time.
but it doesn't tell us how to use that time.
That choice is still ours.
Exactly.
I think this is also connected to happiness.
How?
Many people believe happiness comes from removing all difficulties.
But maybe that's not true.
Why?
Because challenges often give meaning to our experiences.
For example,
Learning a difficult skill.
at first it's frustrating,
But when you improve, you feel proud.
because you know you worked for it.
Right.
So happiness is not always about comfort.
Sometimes it comes from growth.
That's an important difference.
Yeah,
A life with zero challenges might actually become boring,
probably.
because people need something to overcome.
Something to build.
something to care about.
Exactly.
So maybe the future is not about creating the easiest possible life.
Maybe it's about creating a meaningful life with the help of technology.
That sounds much more balanced.
I think so,
Use technology to remove unnecessary stress.
but keep the experiences that help us grow.
Use convenience to create more freedom.
But don't lose our independence.
Use tools to improve our abilities.
But don't stop developing ourselves.
I think that's a good philosophy for modern life.
Yeah,
Because convenience is not the enemy.
and difficulty is not always the enemy either.
Both have a place.
Exactly.
Technology can make our lives easier.
But humans still decide what makes life meaningful.
That's probably the most important point.
Yeah,
So maybe the question is not.
maybe the better question is,
I think that's a much better question.
because the future will continue changing.
New technology will appear,
New challenges will appear.
but the human needs will remain similar.
We still need connection,
Purpose,
creativity,
growth.
and balance.
Thanks for listening to today's episode.
We hope this conversation gave you something to think about.
Remember, technology can make life easier.
But the way we choose to live is still up to us.
Don't just look for a faster life.
Look for a better one.
See you next time.
See you.